Hi all, let's continue to look at Nakamura at the US Chess Championship. In round 2 he was playing against Varuzhan Akobian, who I had the pleasure of meeting when I once played at Gibraltar. Akobian's a very nice guy. He did some very nice lectures on the French defence at Gibraltar, which were greatly appreciated. He's a real French defence expert, and in this game, no surprise, he plays the French defence against Nakamura. And his choice of weapon after d4, d5, well, Nakamura chooses to avoid the Tarrasch and actually invites either the Winnower or the Classical. But in fact, there's a third choice here, which Varuzhan chose, which is d takes e4. This is the third most popular in Livebook, about 3,000 games. But these are the very, very popular options, knight f6 or bishop b4. So this is quite unusual territory. Knight takes e4, knight d7. So black wants to challenge that knight without having double pawns or a queen on f6. So it's a very, very solid approach with black so far. Knight gf6. And now the most popular move by far is actually to take on f6, not retreat the knight. Maybe this is a little bit passive. So taking on f6, bishop d3, and white has a kind of pleasant advantage in that the bishops are quite good here, but this bishop might be a problem bishop in the future. Also, this e-file is quite pleasant, with that outpost on e5 often being quite pleasant. But black seeks immediately to undermine white in the centre with the move c5, so not even moving the bishop, just c5 straight away. Okay, so we have a very interesting position now, where usually d takes c5 is played in the majority of games, or castling, that's popular as well. But we see bishop e3 here, and very aggressive intentions from Nakamura. A very interesting style of play is basically to try and castle queenside with this move. He's vacating the pieces, getting the squares out of the way. So queen c7, queen e2. He's going to castle queenside, and is also stopping against any c4, which might be useful in some instances for black. So the queen here seems a little bit more accurate to stop c4s. Bishop e7, now white castles queenside, and black castles kingside now. And here we see d takes c5. And often, well, there's three main choices here: knight d5, b6, which has been played, which has been seen before as well, according to Livebook, and bishop takes c5. Now, all of these three are supposed to give white a small advantage, actually. Now, b6 is a dynamic move. Obviously, it's a pawn sacrifice, but with the white king on the queen side, it seems very natural to try and blast open a line here against the king. So it is actually taken. A takes, so black is now threatening this pawn, which is protected by the king. So can black make anything of this position? Bishop b7. Black has a nice d5 square here potentially, and ideas like this, looking at a2, seem interesting. We have knight d4. Now this heads for that b5 square, which hasn't got a pawn to kick away the piece. It's also inviting bishop takes g2, which would be extremely risky, of course, because the black king's there. But just to prove that with an example, just immediately here, bishop h6 is dangerous, forcing black to forfeit the exchange. So basically, here, an interesting move in this position, though, might be knight d5 for knight b4. And I think black's got some reasonable practical compensation here for the sacrificed pawn. What Varuzhan did play was rook a5. Maybe this is a little bit more controversial, because potentially this is a tempo gainer, an important tempo gainer for white in the future. After knight b5, potentially now bishop d2 to c3 has these bishops like pointing at black's king. Also, of course, it hits the queen, so queen c6. And we see this now, bishop d2, gaining a tempo. And now, black might actually be threatening queen takes g2, believe it or not. This is actually parried, but it also means that bishop e4 in the future might be useful for this diagonal. Bishop a6, especially here, because it will be looking at a rook if it wasn't protected by the knight. That would be a nice skewer diagonal. For the moment, the knight now is protected with c4. Nakamura doesn't mind double pawns. He's getting black's bishop pair, which is quite important here, and also his king seems quite safe at the moment. Rook fd8, and then we see this move bishop c3, so both the bishops seem to be nicely pointing at black's king. And in fact, there might be an unpleasant surprise at some point with bishop takes f6 to knock out e4 control, and then bishop e4 to skewer. So we see here a move which might not have been the most accurate though to play. Black actually played queen c5 here, which unfortunately does mean there's an important tempo gain available here. Can you see what white played in this position if I give you 5 seconds starting from now? Okay, bishop d4. Yeah, these tempo gaining moves are very important in chess. I mean, especially here, it's a very, very nice centralizing move. And you might think, well, you know, rook takes d4, knight takes. Are we getting two pieces? We're not really, because of bishop takes h7, the old bishop takes h7 trick, winning the queen. What it does mean is the bishop is now skewering the queen against that pawn, because if queen c6, we've got the other trick previously mentioned, bishop takes, and then bishop e4 skewering on this diagonal. So yeah, it's an unfortunate move, queen c5. It seems to be leading into big trouble. If there's an improvement here in this game, that's one key move which is not particularly great. But it seems in this position white is starting to get a good grip on the position. Yeah, so maybe taking on b5 might be a lesser evil. Just try and get that d5 square later. It's difficult to suggest really that black has sufficient compensation at the moment for the pawn. So anyway, queen c5, bishop d4. So this pawn seems to be dropping. Yeah, queen c8, and now it's just taken. So it's two pawns now. Rook d7. Yes, not very pleasant at move 22. Two pawns up. Bishop f2. Now we see black playing bishop c5. Okay, trying to get rid of the bishop pair. Maybe the bishop was heading for h4. But here actually white decides to take off that bishop. Queen takes, and now bishop e4 hitting the rook, and also looking at an exchange of rooks here. Rook b8. And yeah, two pawns up, why not get some things off if possible. Rook takes d7, the pair of rooks come off. And now we see rook c1. So this dissuades black from any taking on b5 will be a disaster here with rook c1. Looking at the rank here, for example, taking we've got rook c8 check, for example, here. Pretty dangerous stuff. Leading to a nasty position anyway. So rook c1 kind of indirectly defends things. Knight f6. Bishop d3 actually reinforcing now officially b5 like this, and getting out of the way of the knight. g6. Potentially later this is horrible for the dark square weaknesses, and you could argue, well, white hasn't got a dark square bishop. Well, the thing is, the queen could act as a dark square bishop later, and this could be very useful, these weakened dark squares. So we see rook d1, and black took on b5, c takes b5. So can black generate something here? Any tricks? Knight d5, rook c1, queen d4. There is a first trick threat now, knight f4 to fork queen and bishop. This is just parried with g3. So it doesn't seem as though black has sufficient compensation for the two pawns. But anyway, rook d8, bishop c4, knight e3, bishop b3. What's interesting here is how white gets control of the centre from this position. If you look at this position, it looks as though black's got good central control, if nothing else, and potentially as though the pawns are not really going anywhere for a while. But let's see what happens next. rook b8, a4, so supporting that b5 pawn. And already, white is now threatening to just kick away this knight in various ways. Rook c3 seems one way, for example. So the knight goes out of the way in any case. And we see queen e4 just evicting the queen from the centre. Queen d2, okay, hits h2. That would be kind of useful perhaps for black. But rook c2 defends h2. Check. And now, yeah, you see that black has been driven away from the centre. Look at the pieces now. The queen's well in the centre, the bishop's on a useful diagonal, pawns are well supported, the rook's on a nice file, and in fact after g4 things are improving even more now. Knight e7, trying to avoid a pin perhaps to the queen. f4, so f5 might be dangerous in the future. Queen d7, and then we see queen e5 looking at taking the rook but also eyeing g7. And now, after rook b7, this is a really good plan. Forget the two extra pawns on the queen's side. There's weakened dark squares here. So even if these pawns are not going anywhere too quickly, we see this move h4. And this is quite instructive, how to exploit the two pawns on the queen side. Is that a trick question? Do you want to just exploit them by queening them? No, what you do is just go for the opponent's king. Here, there's already other concessions to exploit. So h5, h6 is extremely dangerous. Queen d3, and after h5, it's so dangerous here, because the rook's also got access to g2 for this g-file, if black ever dared take on h5. So black, faced with h6, is in a horrible position. Here, he actually resigns. It's not a very pleasant position at all. Horrible threats indeed. If something like queen h3, I mean, there's all sorts of tempting things here, even if h6 is temporarily stopped. Probably the most incisive is rook d2, heading for rook d8, and there's no rook b8 of course here. And if knight d5, this is just horrible. Bishop takes, and then rook takes, threatening again rook d8. So yeah, it seems as well as material down, black's king safety has been shot to pieces here. If we look at this position after a queen h3. So I think, yeah, Varuzhan, he had enough in this position. He's 2 pawns down in any case. Okay, so yeah, it was a strange French defence variation. Well, a solid variation of the French defence, not the winner, not the classical, but black playing an early d takes e4, having a fairly solid position. An interesting pawn sacrifice. It just didn't kind of work out very well. It seems, if there's anything instructive to take away from that, I think chess is often at a very concrete level about tempo gaining. It's really important, these tempo gains, how you can use them for positional advantage. I think Nakamura did that a few times with tempo gains, which kind of improved his central control or helped him consolidate more on the queen side. And then we see this eviction of pieces from the centre later, and instead of using the actual pawns, he just goes for the king here, which actually causes the resignation. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one, and congratulations to Nakamura for being ranked on the live rating lists as number 2 in the world now, number 2. And also Wesley So is, by the way, creeping up to number 5. So as they're mowing down their opponents in the US Championship, yeah, they're escalating the world top 10 as well. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.